So the most important stakeholders, truly the employees. Customers are important, but employees are important. More important because it is actually operating cores of your firms to create some value to the customers. So you considering yourself as a management and how you form and or make the relationship with the employees pretty much important. So especially if you become, in the very near future, all of you guys will be employees. And in the very shorter future after that, you will be also becoming the employer, leader of the firm. So lots of issue will be your, I think, concern. So please pay attention to this part. We called employees and also the workers or hired persons or we have a lot of words calling workers in the firms. But rather than employees, workers, workforces, we call them a human resource this day. So like people in the company is called human resource. So human resource means that considering people as kind of a resource, like physical resource, financial resource, kind of a material that can be used. So when we call people as a human resource, that means, in some aspect, in some sense, it indicating that a company consider human employees, workforce as kind of a cost, right? So human being like employees in the firms, kind of cost this day, right? Previously, so consider as a cost means that human workforces are kind of an ingredient of a company's operation. So just try to see the nuance between employees and human resource. Human resource is a very common term this day. So that does means actually a lot. By calling us employees as a human resource, lots of relationship actually changed. But there used to be a kind of a relationship, like what I call a social contract between employer and employees in the past. But that kind of a social contract transformed. So we now have a totally different relationship between employees and employers. Because of that change of the social contract, employer means company, right? Your boss, simply say, does have a lot new rights over the employees, human resource. By the same token, human resource workers, employees also have a new rights. What I call employee rights. So employer, employee, changing their relationship and their rights also keep modifying, changing, and so on. So without understanding how that relationship progressed, evolved, and changing, simply employers cannot manage well the employees, human workforces, human resource. By the same token, you as an employee also, without understanding your relationship with the employer, just cannot properly working, also becoming, cannot do the right, performing the right function within the organization. So the point here is that like how the relationship, employer, employees are changing. In what way? And what are the kind of a new emerging rights of the employer and employees? So that kind of a new trend of that among the stakeholders will be discussed today. Um, so I think this is, the key ideas of these chapters. The social contract between employer and employees are changing. What is social contract? I think that you have already studied this one in high school. What is social contract? Anyone know that the meaning of social contract? So you know what this means, right? Social contract. What is it? What is social contract? Yeah.
It's like
No, do not. Yeah, just what is it?
it's a theory or a model
Uh-huh.
of the Age of Enlightenment.
Uh-huh. So just rather than just what you see.
Questions the origin of society and legitimacy of authority of states.
Uh-huh. So yeah, what do you think?
Contract between the state and the individual,
Uh-huh.
where the state provides individuals with safety and security, and individuals promise to abide by the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it is kind of a relationship between state and in public, right? So the state provides some protection, simply say, to public. So the social contract theory, contract simply means that every individual certainly does have all rights. However, for the sake of some protection, or say for the sake of some simply say individuals should sometimes give up their rights or duties to have more their own, say, right or duties, right? So even if you may think that individual of us here, people in the state, may have unlimited right or duties and so on. However, we have to understand that by giving up some of us our rights, duties, we can have actually enjoy some kind of a protection from other institution or government or state. So even though we do not explicitly specify what kind of thing we should give up or willing to surrender, we know what it is. Right? We know what kind of a right or obligation, right or duties we are willing to surrender or give up in return to get some other things for the benefit of ourselves. So that's kind of social contracts. Simply say we know what to do and what not to do, right? Even though it is not really written in legal format or legal institution through the constitutionalized forms of the say kind of a explicitly manifested contract. So simply social contract, like we know what to do, right? What should not to do. As a member of a society. Likewise, employer and employees know what to do and what not to do, right? So even if it is not written in your, say, employment contract, we automatically understand it. So that kind of a social contract in workforce is actually changing. So that's the point. Because global environment is changing. As part of that social contract change between employees and employers, these are some of the new trend in that changing social contract. Like employer, as I mentioned earlier, has nowadays kind of more right for themselves as a hiring body. But likewise, equally, the employees also has a lot of more rights for themselves. As you mentioned here, these are some of the employees' rights. Make sure by the institution, law, regulation, and so on. Like right not to be fired, for instance, without any a clear explanation or just cause. That is kind of a new right to the employees. And employees a right to declare or want, demand a fair treatment and due process. Simply, this means that employees has the right to know what is going on about themselves. And freedom of speech in the workplace are also very common this day, a very widespread, more popular, new emerging right to the employees. So, social contract, like in the past, employees should show some strong loyalty to the companies, and companies also show some make sure their job security, safety to the employees. But that kind of unwritten, unspoken relationship, what we call social contract, is changing because of this reason. Like globalization, new technology, deregulation, shareholders' activism. So simply means that because of these factors, the companies, employers, companies, business environments are become much more competitive. So unlike the day in the past, the companies cannot really guarantee, make sure their safety or security of employees. Right? Because of that, the employer and employers' vulnerability in the global environment, employees should protect themselves. The company cannot protect the employees. So this changing environments became the source of the changing social contract between employees and employers. I mean, probably the textbook also describe, and also I also empirically understand this one pretty much. At the age of 30, just count how many jobs this day a younger generation about 30, age of 30 tend to have. Like the textbooks say about 7 or 9 jobs already been through at the age of 30. Probably the Korea may not be exception, right? Like your senior students already have been somebody who in contact with me who graduated like almost 5 or 6 years ago. Probably they may change their job a couple of times. So this does mean that loyalty to the employers, company, getting diminishing, weaker, and so on, right? So the company does not actually value this day your, say, loyalty. They value your performance. So that's actually how the work environment is now at the moment, currently, and which also became the reason for changing social contract. I mean, this is classically, clearly compare how social contract in the past different from a new social contract, right? Job security, even though the company do not explicitly say that your jobs are secured, safe, and guaranteed once you are hired, there was a kind of a unspoken promise, but those days were just simply gone. So this day, simply lots of people, lots of jobs are pretty much like non-tenure jobs. So very contract-based job arrangements are very common practice. So that's how the social contract between employee and employers are evolved and changed. So likewise, from the employee's perspective, as I told you, like changing your job quite often deemed as a very negative to your career in the past, but which is not quite true these days. Very often, the turnover rate of the firm tend to be very high, and also employees tend to changing their job very often. And job assignment is here. Once you be hired for a particular position, you just go that way. But this day, lots of rotation, new assignments, and many of your jobs are pretty much temporarily. So which means that you have to deal with several jobs simultaneously. So that environment also changed the social contract. And interestingly, I think this is also quite new trend. Even the time when I was on the company, like the company tend to guarantee lots of job training, right? They provide plenty of job training for creating more like learning organization environment and more improved workforce, the better educated workforces. But this day, it is actually your job, not really company's job, that actually educate yourself. But you have to educate yourself. The company won't helping it anymore. So continuous learning by the employee themselves are pretty much common in this day. And team-based projects rather than individual accomplishments also new changing social contract. So like climate in the organization radically different, as you see here. So that does mean how the social contract in the companies are changing. Because of that new social contract change in the workplace, some of the new phenomenon or business practice actually created. Simply that is by the consistent effort from the employees. Outplacement is an example. Even if you say being laid off, your employers sometimes or quite often this day tend to provide or help or assistance employees to find another job placement, work position, and so on. So it's like outplacement is employers' kind of a responsibility for their ex-hired employees, right? Which was not really the part of the responsibility in the past. But this is quite new trend this day, even if you just become fired or lay off. Do you know what's the difference between layoff and fired? You are fired means that no chance for you to come again to my company. Right? So your layoff means that you are not able to work for us, but you may try us later. So outplacement is kind of a company's ethical responsibility to take care of their ex-employees. Strongly required, asked by the employees, and now the trend is actually moving towards conducting the outplacement job by the employees. So that is kind of a new social contract, right? Kind of a part of new relationship between employees and employers. If you actually hired, certainly the first day you do is just you sign some of the contract. So when you sign the contract of employment, you see lots of say, please not only look at your compensation or salary pay scheme, but also you should write what kind of right, employee right the company actually offered to you. So you have to read it very carefully. There are some of the very fundamental rights guaranteed by the government law legislation, and some of the rights you can earn by the help of the labor union, but there are some of also other rights you can earn by the provision of your companies. So you have to look carefully what kind of right you can actually use as a member of new companies. Like statutory rights, which is actually guaranteed or provided by the law. So all of these employees does have this kind of a right? Like right to organize, like right to act right to bargain collectively, right to act collectively. So three fundamental primary rights, mostly the labor union, labor tend to have. So that's pretty much a statutory right. So a lot of companies these days allow, in Korea as well, union. So many companies does have their own labor union. However, the unionization rates globally pretty much very low. So you see, the labor union tend to be very strong, powerful voice over any issues over the society. However, if you look at the rate of unionization, it is pretty low. Like Germany tend to be one of the highest unionized country, but probably about 9%. USA, very low unionized country. So simply say like 7 out of 100 persons, employees are only belonging to labor union. So the point these days is that without you joining the labor union, the company try to satisfy the employees' requirements. Right? So before even act collectively together, the company try to solve it, satisfy you first, by the help of the human resource management this day. Anyway, you have these fundamental rights, enterprise right as well. The company does have their own unique kind of a grant or kind of their company specific promises to the employees. So you have to make sure what kind of specific rights are allowed or given to you. So as I told you, like this day, because of the global market environment change, the social contract between employees and employees are changing. And the point here is that because of that change, employees tend to have more stronger rights compared to the time in the past, like job-related rights, for instance. Again, in USA, for instance, there is employment at will. What is employment at will? Employees, workers has the right, as I mentioned earlier, like right to organize, right to act collectively, right to raise voice collectively. So those are the fundamental rights given to the employees. Likewise, employers also has their right, of course. So pretty much this is equal society, right? So employees has right, but on the other hand, company has right. That's what I call employment at will. In Korean, how can you say in Korean? Employment at will. 임의 고용. I just cannot. So employment at will, as you see. So employment at will means kind of a right of the employer. So that means the employer can fire you, lay off you at any cost, possibly, if they want, if the employer wants. And you cannot, as an employee, cannot resist it. So if you see a movie in the, like a Hollywood movie, for instance, you can see a lot of like scenes, say, showing like you are fired and you have to just pack all of your stuff and leave. Kind of example of employment at will. The company fire you under any circumstance. No matter what you have in your employment contract, companies, employers' decision will is at the front all the times. So that is the employer's employment at will. So, however, the power of the employment at wills are diminishing weaker. It's because of the power of the employees. But like the only exception is USA. Still in USA, for instance, a lot of companies strongly shows utilizing their own right, what we call employment at will. Nevertheless, the trend this day is that against the employment at will, which is the right of the employers, the employees' rights are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Kind of this one, like the right not to be fired without any just cause. So you just cannot lose your position unfair way. Right. So even if you fared or treated unequally, you have a right to see what went on, and we have a right to correct it. We have a right to ask to correct your unfair treatment. So that's what we call a due process. Strongly, due process are given to a lot of employees these days. So whenever you have noticed or experienced like unequal, unfair treatment, you may declare your right of the right to due process. And freedom of speech and expressions all the time guaranteed to make sure privacy, safety as well, health in the workplace. So a lot of companies these days, because of the win of the employees, activism, workforce activism, employees these days have a lot of these job-related rights. As I mentioned earlier, the employment at will are the right of the employers. So the employers can do whatever they want if necessary over to the employees. However, we had a lot of objection to that ideas of the employment at will. We call employment at will doctrine. The objection is like employees, as you see here, deserve a respectful treatment. Right? They are also human beings. They should respect it as the employer does. And employees are asked to have some responsibility, so does the employer. And employees are, as you see, expected to show some trustworthy, loyalty, and so on to employers. And why not then the employers are doing the same thing to the employees? So kind of reciprocity each other. became the ideas of the employment at will doctrine. So, like excluding some USA, the human rights, especially the employees' right, getting more stronger. Especially you as a boss or employer, you should be very careful or be cautious if you need to terminate employee or employees. Right. So these are actually the official steps when you terminate the contract of the employees. Right. So do not say you are fired in public place. Right, if you need to fire them, you should do it in his or her private space. And be mindful of employees' logistics. Just consider, even if you are firing him or her, you have to consider her's actually progress of doing the companies. Her specific or his specific condition in the companies. So, for instance, he or she may be in the middle of something, of a particular project. Probably you may give some more space to them. Preserve more dignity, of course. And you have to let them know what you are going to tell them in advance. You just cannot say, suddenly, you see me in my office, and you just cannot say, you're fired. So you have to give some notice in advance. And you have to explain why. So by showing specific, transparent criteria, so the employees, the layoffs employees can clearly understand why they lose their position or job. So terminating on employees, this is a pretty much very kind of a very caution required job. So you just cannot do it arbitrarily as you wish all the time. There should be kind of formal steps on the time, especially like don't fire on Friday, which is quite a good idea, right? If you are fired on Friday, then what happens? Your Saturday and Sunday will be destroyed, right? But actually it doesn't matter if you are fired on Monday, then your remaining week also destroyed. So, but anyway, that's the rules. Don't fire on Friday. And like sending message through email is also not quite right. Kind of what not to do. And just avoid platitude, which is also quite good ideas, right? Don't say any kind of a typical statement like it's very hard for me to do this or that. So that kind of a very common platitude may be even hurting the laying off employees. And don't rush through the meeting. So you know what this means. But the point here, what kind of message you receive from the employers, you should not forget that you have the right to due process. Right? So due process is as you see here, your rights, and you as employees right to see or to go through a review again by third person, right? So you want more clear, say, judgment, not by biased judgment or impartial judgment, but you want to make sure that a particular decision making is also can be the same decision by showing them to the third person. Impartial third person, as you see here. So you see, if employees see unfair, say, decision to him or her, probably he or she may ask for due process. Like, you are fired, for instance, unfairly. So you did your best, but you are fired, but don't know why. So in that case, you may request kind of a due process. Like, ask them to see, say, peer review, for instance. That's kind of a due process, example of due process. Or even like government organization, like public hearing may be example of due process. So if employees request a due process, then you as an employer should meet their request. So that's why all companies should require to have an official due process system. Always the problem is when things going wrong between employer and employees. So probably in that case, employer try to terminate the employees, and employees may resist it. So there is actually a point of the conflict. So how to solve that conflict? That's the questions. Due process may be a way of solving that dispute, but also other policy you may think of to solve that damaged relationship between employer and employees. So these are some of the examples. So that's why peer review panels are always prepared. So you will be evaluated not only by your boss, but also your colleague all the time. So the company try to have that information all the time. So in case when companies deliver a negative or bad signals to you, the company may provide the peer review panel, the data information. So you cannot really resist it. Ombudsman is also very common practice this day to solve the damaged relationship between employer and employees. So kind of a third person try to solve any problem of employees. So please do not confuse between ombudsman and human resource management. Human resource management simply, which is the job of human resource department, in charge of training, hiring, educating, compensating, retaining of the companies, while the ombudsman is carrying employees only when there exist disputes, debate, problems among employees. And open door policy, if you see a lot of Korean companies try to promote this open door policy. So open door policy means that the boss, really the top ranked, high ranked boss, open their door of the office. So you can just drop by any time to complain something or say something if you don't like something about the company. So that's open door policy. But so what we call ADR, alternate dispute resolution. So rather than going through the official legal procedure, litigation, or the former due process, probably these are kind of a method to solve the problem between employees and employers. However, the effectiveness of this may be in question, sometimes questionable. Especially the open door policy case. The managers always support managers. So if your boss may hate you and if you dislike it, and you may discuss this one to even higher ranked boss, then certainly your boss are your boss. Your managers are managers. No chance for managers on your side if you have a problem with your own boss or managers. So as you see, there seems to be kind of a tendency for a manager to support another manager. So that may be the limit of the open door policy. And the problem here again is that process should be closed, personal, but it tends to be revealed anyway. In that case, people try to avoid this ADR, an open door system. Another quite emerging, also very hot topic, especially in discussing the relationship between employees and employers, are whistleblower system. So whistleblower means that if you see a kind of illegal behavior or practice which is systematically done under the control of your boss or top management, and you can disclose it to public. So that is whistleblower. Right? As I told you, like a lot of global firm scandal like Enron, Tycoon, and a lot of global firms like financial scam things that became public, revealed by insiders of the firms, what I call a whistleblower. Without whistleblower, nobody knew that bad things systematically happened. So the point here is that systematically, the legal system should protect the whistleblower and whistleblower systems. But like traditionally, we believe that the employees should be, say, following or should show some obedience or loyalty to the employees. So talking about what employers did out to public kind of consider as a traitor or sometimes, which is quite contrary to the social contradiction. So even though we say that whistleblowing system should be make sure guaranteed and we have to protect whistleblower, but in fact, a lot of companies do not show a strong protection of whistleblowers. Of course, you cannot fire the whistleblower. But we see a lot of here unfair treatment to the whistleblower. So these are the examples of consequences of whistleblower. You just tell the truth to public about the bad things of your illegal behavior of the firms. So you should be rewarded. But in fact, you are receiving like criticism, attack. but from your own workplaces, and or you may be assigned to a less desirable works, and pretty also like much heavier workload to you, and so you see systematically or the whole organization may treat you in badly if you do a whistleblowing job to public. So the government's perspective, they set up a stronger and stronger regulation to protect the whistleblowers. Otherwise, there's no way to monitor or censoring companies' bad behavior. So these are the examples of USA government protection system to the whistleblower. I think in Korean case, we don't still haven't got any stronger government-wide protection system to whistleblower. But hopefully soon we will have that one. So the point here is this one. If you see very, say, unlawful or illegal things happen in the companies, so your heart, your consciousness may telling you that I should reveal, I should talk about this one to public. So the point is that before you blow like bad behavior, these are some of the items you have to think about. Before you're telling the truth public, is there any other alternative? So also you have to think about, is this kind of disclosure to public really help the interest of the public? So what will be also the outcome by telling the truth? What will be the benefit to the firms? Even yourself and your family as well. So whistleblowing, if necessary, if it helps the interest of the public, it is a necessary evil. However, you have to think about correctly, seriously, what would be the effect. Is there any other way? So about the a new relationship between employees and employers, I think the human resource management class may teach you more how HR managers, for instance, try to design their own programs, systems to, say, make their people happy, create more favorable working environment, and so on. So a lot more issues will be discussed in your human resource management class. But make sure that the relationship is changing, right? As you see from this table. That's the relationship in the past on your left side of the column, and the right side of the column is a new relationship between employees and employers. Okay, let us finish quite early today. So, any questions so far? So actually we cover lots of chapters. So certainly your midterm will be after the chapters of the midterm. But like after the midterm, we actually cover a lot more chapters. So for preparing your final, some of the chapters you don't really need to read carefully, and some of the chapters are quite essential. So that's why I will talk about this one on Tuesday. Okay. Okay, see you then Tuesday and have a good weekend.